Good day. I'm TMac. I love FPV flight, and I've decided to position myself to take advantage of any new opportunities that may come about with the FAA's implementation of new regulations. Things like flights beyond visual line of sight. So with that in mind, and as part of my Journey to Better FPV Fun, I chose to prep for and take the FAA's Part 107 exam to become certified as a remote pilot with a small unmanned aircraft system, or sUAS rating, commonly referred to as a commercial drone license. In this video, I'm going to show you how I did my Part 107 exam prep by using the available free study resources from the FAA and a couple online YouTube videos. This process I used, which you can too, enabled me to pass the Part 107 exam with a 92% score and obtain my FAA certification as a remote pilot. I found the most challenging part of prepping for the exam to be finding out what to study. So in this video, I'll show you exactly what topics I studied, then provide you with the specific free resources I used to study those topics, along with my study schedule and the specific notes I made for myself along the way that helped me to pass the Part 107 exam and obtain my remote pilot certification. All resources are linked in the video's description below. If I can do this, you can too. Sound good? Then give this video a thumbs up below, share it with your buddies, and subscribe to your TMac FPV channel, your home for your journey to better FPV fun, flights, and racing stuff. Before we get started with the topics, I'd recommend you go ahead and schedule your exam for two reasons. One, it's going to encourage you to study, and two, based on current situations, you may find the occupancy of a valid test location is limited, and there may not be any test slots available near you for an extended period of time. So you might want to schedule your exam well in advance. Before you even schedule your exam, you'll need to obtain an FAA tracking number, or an FTN. To obtain an FTN, you'll need to go to this IACRA website at iacra.faa.gov, which I'll link below. From there, I recommend you read this new user's guide, and it'll explain the process to you, including registering as an applicant on the homepage. So you go back to the homepage, click on Register, Applicant, read these terms of service, and if you agree, click on Agree to Terms of Service and Continue. Then you'll need to fill out the information it asks of you and click on Register. IACRA will then display your FAA tracking number, or the FTN, which you'll want to write down and save somewhere because you're going to need this number to schedule your test. Once you have your FTN, you can then go ahead and schedule your exam. For your initial exam for a remote pilot certificate, that's going to be the Unmanned Aircraft General Small UAG. To find an approved test center near you, and to schedule your exam with your new FAA tracking number, you'll go to this PSI site at faa.psiexams.com, which of course I'll provide you a link to in the video description below. Alright, let's say you've done all that and are ready to start studying. Let's take a look at some of the topics you should learn. Real quick before we get started with the topics, I want to show you the three main resources you can get for free, which I'll be listing throughout the remainder of this video. They're the Remote Pilot Study Guide, the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, and the Aeronautical Information Manual. All three of these are available from the FAA site, or I've also linked to them in this video's description below. There's one other book you may want to consider getting, and that's the Airman Knowledge Testing Supplement. It's not free, and you will be provided it when you take your exam, because it's what all the sectional chart test questions refer to. You can pick this up for around $10 on Amazon, and I've linked to it down in the video description below as well. My thought was, if I can practice with the actual book they'll be having me use on the exam, why not go ahead and get it for a few bucks? Now, before you get overwhelmed, you don't need to read all of any of these books. In fact, what you'll see as we go through the rest of this video is I've identified specifically for you only the sections of each of these which I spent time reading and studying. It's really not that bad at all. Okay, the first topic you'll need to become familiar with is airspace. Don't be too concerned about the complexity of this chart. What I want you to get out of this right now is there are four types of airspace: controlled, uncontrolled, special use, and other. Within controlled and uncontrolled airspace, you have these six classifications you see here, namely A, B, C, D, E, and G that you'll need to know about. All of these airspace classifications you see here, with the exception of G, are what's considered controlled airspace. Controlled airspace is simply that in which Air Traffic Control Service is used to maintain control and safety of the airspace. Class G is uncontrolled and therefore doesn't have any air traffic control service. Now you'll need to know a bit more about these airspace classifications, such as if you're planning on flying within controlled airspace, you'll need to get prior authorization from Air Traffic Control or ATC. You'll also need to identify these different classifications of airspace on an aeronautical section chart, which is actually our second topic. To become familiar and proficient with the airspace topic, these are the specific sections and pages of the free resources which I studied. So here's the sectional chart topic I just mentioned. What a mess, right? No worries. You're going to get this with no problem. Here's why. Remember I said they give you that Airman Knowledge Testing Supplement book, which I'm recommending you go ahead and get ahead of time to practice with? Well, when they ask you a sectional chart question, they refer you to a figure in that book. It's an open book test when it comes to sectional chart questions. They may ask you to find out how high you can fly when inspecting a tower a specific distance from an airport. So to answer that question, you'll need to know what the symbol for a tower looks like. No problem. It's right over here. They give you the answer in the legend at the beginning of the book. Remember that. Use the legend in the front of the book they give you. And if you purchase it ahead of time, go ahead and practice with the book. Also, in the margins of the figure they refer you to, there's a scale of distances shown. They also give you a ruler. So use the ruler and the scale shown in the margin of the figure to measure out the distance they want you to identify the tower from the airport. Next to the tower will be some numbers. Let's take this tower as an example. Southwest of the airport. It's got two numbers associated with it. The top one is 1331, and that's how high the tower is from mean sea level, or MSL. This bottom number in parentheses is 420, and that's how high the top of the tower is above the ground, above ground level, or AGL. Because you'll have studied the rules and regulations, you'll know you can fly 400 feet over the top of a structure as long as you're within a 400-foot radius of it. So you can add 400 to 420, and then say you're allowed to fly 820 feet high when inspecting this tower. But you also need to have an understanding of what class airspace you're in, identified by these colored circles. Anytime you'll be in controlled airspace as defined earlier, you'll need to get air traffic control or ATC authorization to enter that airspace. In this case, we're not in any colored circles. So it looks like we're in Class G airspace here and can fly that 820 feet high within a 400-foot radius of that tower without requiring ATC authorization. For this one example showing how to read a sectional chart, you've just learned about obstruction symbols, the tower, from the legend, the fact that the legend is in the front of the Airman Knowledge Testing Supplement they give you for the test, and it contains a lot of the answers for you. You've also learned elevations of the top of the structure above mean sea level, or MSL, are those numbers without parentheses. The height of the structure above ground level, or AGL, and those are the numbers in parentheses. Different classes of airspace are defined by different colored, solid, and dashed boundaries, which are described again over here in the legend. And if you intend on flying in controlled airspace, you're going to need air traffic control or ATC authorization first. Now, of course, there's other things you need to learn about reading sectional charts, and these are the free resources and specific sections I used to get up to speed on them. Our next topic is the different types of weather and how it affects aircraft flight, along with how to read routine weather reports and terminal area forecasts. The diagram shown here depicts the life cycle of a thunderstorm from the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge. There are 3 stages to a thunderstorm life cycle. Those are the cumulus stage, the mature stage, which is the most dangerous to aircraft, and the dissipating stage, which severe downdrafts can be associated with. Over here, we have the format for a routine weather report, or METAR. This first block of letters, the word METAR, is just the type of weather report. KGGG is the station identifier for which the report is valid. 161753Z is the date and time the report was issued. So on the 16th day of the month at 1753 Zulu, or Coordinated Universal Time. Auto means the report was automatically generated. These numbers with KT behind them are the wind speed and direction. The wind direction is coming from 140 degrees at 21 knots, gusting to 26 knots. Visibility is 3/4 of a statute mile with thunderstorms and rain. The plus sign in front of TSRA means heavy, so heavy thunderstorms and rain. Along with mist, and the visibility is broken at 800 feet and overcast at 1200 feet with cumulonimbus clouds. The temperature is 18 degrees, the dew point is 17 degrees, and the barometric pressure is 29.7. The remarks are that the pressure is falling rapidly. That's basically how you read a METAR. Here we have a terminal area forecast, which uses basically the same format as a METAR. The main difference is it's broken down into different forecast times, denoted by the letters FM, which stands for from. So this terminal area forecast, which was published on the 11th day of the month at 11:30 Zulu, is good for the time frame of the 11th day of the month at 1200 Zulu to the 12th day of the month at 1200 Zulu, or for a 24-hour period. And then they break the forecast down into specific chunks of time. From 1500 Zulu, the wind is coming from 160 degrees at 15 knots and gusting to 25 knots. The visibility is greater than 6 statute miles. You've got scattered clouds at 4,000 feet, etc. All times are in coordinated universal time for both the METAR and the TAF, which is sometimes identified by the letter Z for Zulu time. Of note, on the TAF, you'll see these letters CB, and those stand for cumulonimbus clouds, which are the clouds that form thunderstorms. Don't take the topics of weather and reading the formats of weather reports lightly. The specific sections of the free resources I studied for these topics are listed here. Our next topic is airport operations, which includes traffic patterns. Unless otherwise indicated, the standard are left-hand traffic patterns. This simply means that on approach of an aircraft to an airport, it will normally be turning to the left. The runways are normally aligned in the direction of the prevailing winds for that area, and the aircraft will always take off and land into the wind against the direction of the wind because it gives the aircraft more lift to do so. The direction of the wind is seen over here on the right by this wind indicator and is also identified by this downwind text block here. Normally, aircraft will enter the traffic pattern at a 45-degree angle midway on the downwind leg of the traffic pattern, turn left on the base leg, and then left again on final, landing into the wind. If this were the layout of an actual runway, this runway would be labeled 09 for 90 degrees from north. Directly south would be 180 degrees, and directly west would be 270 degrees. So when the aircraft is on the final leg for runway 09, it's heading in this direction, into the wind. If the aircraft is left downwind of 09, that means it's on the downwind leg of the pattern with the runway on its left, heading this way, or for our example, due west at 180 degrees, and the aircraft would be physically located north up here of the runway. The information I studied to learn more about airport operations can be found in these specific sections of the free resources. Small UAS loading is our next topic. One of the things you should know about this is anytime an aircraft is doing anything other than straight and level flight, there's an additional load on the aircraft. Here's where you can do some simple math with your calculator to calculate the load on an aircraft when it's banking left or right using this chart. If your model aircraft weighs 50 pounds and you have it banking at a 50-degree angle, using this chart, we see the load factor would be about 1.5. You take the weight of the aircraft, which would be 50, and multiply it by the load factor of 1.5, and you get a load on the aircraft of 75 pounds. More information on small UAS loading and the basics of flight aerodynamics can be found in these specific sections of the free resources. Our next topic is called Aeronautical Decision Making, or ADM. Now, the FAA has spent a lot of time and effort developing various types of ADM training, and it's required to be incorporated into pilot certification processes. So you know you're going to get questions on this topic. ADM is a systematic approach used by pilots to determine the best course of action in response to a given set of circumstances. Two defining elements of ADM are hazards and risk. The goal of risk management is to proactively identify safety-related hazards and reduce their associated risks. One known hazard can be the attitude of the pilot. The FAA has identified 5 hazardous attitudes as depicted in this chart. Should you find yourself or others experiencing any of these attitudes, the antidote or remedy for them to eliminate the hazard is listed over here on the right. There's a lot of information on the ADM process, and I highly recommend you study the sections identified here. Our last topic is rules and regulations, and there's really not that many to remember. However, since this is an exam pertaining to Part 107 of Title 14 Code of Federal Regulations, you might want to take a look at it. Seriously, I've got it linked below, and most, if not all of the important things to remember about it, I've condensed in my own personal study notes, which I've also made available through a link below. These are things like how old you need to be to register an sUAS, and the answer to that is 13 years old. You need to be 16 years old to take the certification exam. Daylight operations of your UAS, to include the definition of civil twilight and what's required during those times of day. 14 CFR Part 48 also has more information on registration and marking requirements for small unmanned aircraft, and these are the specific sections within Part 48 you may want to take a look at. Beyond these topics I've gone over, I strongly recommend you take a few practice tests once you think you've gone over enough of the material to check and see if in fact you're ready for the exam. Here are 3 I've gone through that helped me. I also recommend that you take a look at these 5 videos. In fact, before reading up on any of these topics, I'd start just by casually watching Tony Northrup's video. Although it's a few years old, the information in it is still good, and it'll get your mind in the right mode to learn this stuff. The Aeroworks Productions 3 videos on sectional charts are outstanding. I highly recommend them. And this last video by Better B-Roll goes through a whole bunch of practice questions and answers. It's basically a video practice test. So what I've done here is taken all of those topics we just went over, along with the specific study resources and sections, and drafted up a possible study schedule for you. This isn't really an aggressive schedule at all. It amounts to about 45 minutes to an hour per day. You, of course, could do more to shorten the amount of time, or less, depending upon the amount of time you're able to commit to your goal. I know for me, it worked best to schedule my exam up front, which basically encouraged me to get a little bit done each day. I know one thing for sure. If you want to get FAA certified as a remote pilot, you can do it with all the free resources available to you. If I can do it, you can too. That's the process I use to become an FAA certified remote pilot. Let me know if you plan on using it as your FAA Part 107 exam prep, and if you do, call on back after your exam and leave a comment below describing your exam experience. I know you're going to do great. Thanks for your time. I'll see you next video. Clear skies, friend.